Hello, I'm Guillermo de Cervantes of the Kingdom of Trimaris, and we have a wonderful team together to share with you and learn together community. I am co-facilitating today with Lady Maindria. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Lady Maindria Esclarmonde. I have been in and out of the SCA for the last 10 years, and it is my absolute delight to help facilitate this conversation among a variety of female combatants across the SCA, and welcome our worldwide guests. Thank you so much for attending this evening.
Thank you. And Her Majesty of Trimaris, could you please introduce yourself?
Of course, I am Catherine Furnier, currently Her Majesty Trimaris. I've been in the SCA for about only 10, 12 years now. But thank you so much for hosting this. It's an important topic, an important conversation, and we really appreciate the opportunity to bring people together from all over, apparently, and have this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Duchess Sibilla, would you please introduce yourself?
I'm Sibilla Daine, fighting for over 20 years. Yeah, happy to have been.
Duchess Sibilla, I'm sorry, we couldn't hear that.
Can you hear it now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Sibilla from Trimaris. Been fighting for over 20 years. Started out fighting heavy, transitioned into rapier a while back. Very, very honored to have been asked to help in this conversation. So,
Thank you. Duchess Cherish.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Making sure. I know there's a lot of background noise. I'll try to stay muted. I'm Duchess Cherish. I've been in the SCA for 24 years now, and I've been fighting about 20 years of that. I love all aspects of the fighting. I love meetings like this where we get to talk and get to share all our different ideas and see just how our sports and our art form has grown over the years. So thank you so much for hosting.
Thank you for being here. And Sir Bree, would you join us and introduce yourself, please?
Absolutely. I'm Sir Brealthen De Raimes. I've been in the society and fighting for heavy for 36 years. Super happy to be here and talk about these things and get other people's insight as well. So thanks for the invite.
Thank you.
Thank you, all of you, for joining us. And there is someone who would be here with us if they had the opportunity to be here. So our participants have requested that we take a moment of silence to observe that the honor and the legacy of Maester Hawk as the first female Master of Defense for the Kingdom of Trimaris. There's no doubt that were it possible, she would be here with us having this conversation today. And if we could take a moment to honor her memory. Thank you so very much for joining us, and we'd love to get started. So,
I'd also like to acknowledge those that came before us. When I use that word "us," I recognize it is in a general us, but the ladies that have paved the way, and when we were discussing in preparation for this, the name Sir Trudy came up, as somebody who really forged the path for so many who followed. Duchess Cherish, could you please describe Sir Trudy and her involvement in the SCA?
After talking to Sir Trudy, she is an absolutely amazing person. If you ever get an opportunity to share a drink with her and sit down and listen to some stories, I would highly recommend it. She's got quite the tale. She's she's done everything and paved the way for all of us to be here, including having to do an art side to show that that it is period for women to fight. Getting a letter from her doctor to show that women aren't that fragile, that they are able to fight. It's not, their bladders aren't going to explode the first time they get hit in the stomach. So I know she had to do a lot of what we would see as very unusual and insulting things, but she did those things back then, and she paved the way, and she never gave up. And she's been an inspiration, much like Sir Bree has been an inspiration for many of us throughout the years. And Sir Bree, as long as she's been fighting, I do have to say Sir Bree is the first one that armored me up 20 years ago. Her women's symposium was amazing. Both Carolina, who is a squire sister of mine, and I went down to her symposium. She armored us both up. Carolina is fighting right now, fights 4 times a week in the squire to Sir Forgal. And I was knighted 6 or 7 years, I don't know, I get hit in the head a lot, but I was knighted 6 or 7 years ago, I think, at this point. And Bree's the one that started all of us. So she's a great inspiration and always has been for many women on the field.
Thanks, sister. Appreciate you.
Sir Bree, can you describe what a women's symposium is, and why do we need a women's symposium?
So the Women's Symposium is a platform that men and women can come together, and we offer several classes, and then we offer practical applications. So this year we did footwork, and then we ran through the footwork, each and every one of us. Well, maybe not me. I was hobbling through that footwork, but you know, it's a great opportunity for men who are driving fighter practices in their local areas to address some of the issues that women might face and bring up at the symposium. They oftentimes walk away learning just as much, if not more, than the women that come every year. And so it's a great opportunity for everybody to just kind of gather and learn some new skills, try those new skills out, and then really address some of the questions that on both sides are very prevalent. You know, what do I do when a woman cries at my fighter practice? Or why can't I get these guys to actually, you know, train me instead of just beating me? You know, so there's a lot that's discussed. We just celebrated our 20th year of holding that class at Gulf Wars. So that was pretty exciting.
I'm sorry, women, is that a thing? Women crying in practice?
Yeah, it happens, and men too. I actually had a gentleman that admitted freely that he was fighting a duke, and he was just getting schooled one fight after the other, and he broke down in frustration. And he actually admitted that in front of about 30 women, and it broke barriers. I mean, these women were like, oh gosh, that's really you admitted that, and it was refreshing, and I was so proud of him. Because he was breaking a barrier that most women have a problem with. They're like, yeah, I cry, I'm so humiliated, and it's not about that. It's all about the chemicals and the fight and what you're going through. Sometimes just pure frustration. That's okay. Sometimes it's just pain. Sorry, Majesty.
Your Majesty, what is the experience like in fencing? Is it the same?
Absolutely. I mean, definitely. If you're talking specifically about the crying when you get frustrated, 100%. And that's not unique to the SCA or fencing or heavy fighting. That females tend to respond to things differently. Sometimes can have that response, and males do too. But a lot of men don't know how to handle that. Sometimes even other women don't quite know how to handle it when you have someone whose tears are the way they express their frustration or their anger. So it's definitely helpful to have these kinds of conversations and help people know how to handle that and what to do with it on the field.
So if I'm a marshal and I'm watching a fight between woman, woman, and we witness the frustration tears, maybe perhaps anger tears, we probably won't know the difference.
True.
What should I do as a marshal?
My recommendation is, as long as they're continuing to fight, is ignore it. And I see some Sibilla nodding there. Sibilla, actually, why don't you jump in here? Because I know you've actually run into that not too long ago.
Yeah, I mean, frustration crying is definitely a thing. And I don't think that as long as the combatants are being safe in their fight and continuing their fight, that it should be stopped because of that. That actually just draws more attention to it. And most people just need to work through it on their own. Like I've definitely had my frustration cries where I just needed to take a minute to get it out for a minute and then clear my head and get back to what I was doing. So as from a martial standpoint, as long as it's not becoming an issue of safety, then it shouldn't be addressed.
So is there a way that women can be trained or coached differently by the other fighters in their lives that can help them on the field manage these frustrations? How is the best way that people who are training and people who are offering support can do so to fighters when they're having these feelings?
I'd like to jump in on that first. Yeah, I'd like to jump in that for a second. So, everybody's a little bit different. Some people don't want to be addressed when they cry. Some people, they just don't know what's happening. And a lot of times, young combatants, whether they be male or female, are not really sure about all the chemicals that are boiling up. You've got adrenaline, you've got all these different chemicals that are boiling up. And oftentimes what happens is they're not even aware of that. So there's a discussion. Hey, this is normal. First of all, shaming anybody is just flat out wrong, right? This happens, it's normal. This is what you're experiencing. Let's talk through it. And, you take them off to the side after the fight is done, you let them work through it. And then you have that discussion. Are you aware of what's happening? These are the chemicals that are boiling up to the surface. This is how you vent your emotions, whatever it is. And you let them talk to you and say, okay, this is how I'm feeling. And I think this is what it is. And then oftentimes I'll suggest, are you aware that, you have different chemicals in play? Have you ever considered that and how they impact you as a fighter? I personally, after fighting for a long time, need to walk away from the general community because I'm hugely aggressive and, and I don't really want to present myself that way. So I need a time to come down off of that energy level or that chemical, high. And our bodies are made that way. They're made to, give us great chemicals that put us into the fight. So
what I'm hearing universally is that the best way is to provide space and grace.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we absolutely.
Grace. Okay.
Thank
So-
you. People,
So
if
much.
they don't want to talk about it, don't make them at that point. Like, be respectful of their wishes in that moment. Like, ask them if they want to have that conversation. Because if they don't, we need to just let them be for a minute.
Right. And that's what they need.
I'd like to include something on that too, on our side too. It's going to be good to communicate that, because the number one thing they want to make sure is are you hurt? Are you? And if we make it a point, but like, no, listen, I'm good. This is just a thing, and we keep going. If we communicate that clearly as no, I'm good. Just give me a second. My pain nerves are connected to my tear ducts, and it's coming out that way, and I got it under control. Or, let me, just like if anybody gets hit hard enough and you get that armpit shot or something like that, hit hard enough, you're like, okay, hang on. Just give me a second. And everybody is honorable and respectful enough to like, okay, take a second, gather your thoughts. It's the same thing. Give me a second. Let me, okay. All right. Now we can continue. So it's going to be good for us to communicate that too, because our opponents are honorable and they want to make sure that they're not hurting us too. Did I just hurt you? If I hear somebody scream or curse, like other people curse, like somebody mentioned earlier, some people curse. If I hear them curse, are you okay? The first thing I want to make sure is that, are they okay? I'm not trying to stop the fight. I'm not trying to disrespect them. And if they're like, yeah, just give me a second. I think it's exactly the same thing. It's just a different physical manifestation.
Right on.
We actually have a participant that has brought up a very important concern. It's someone who's having some issues with some headspace and was wondering if they could talk a little bit about after this topic. I would love to get this person in contact with someone personally to help provide them the help that they need. Is there anyone here that would like to volunteer to speak with this person? All right, so to Rebecca, Ms. Cherish, please connect after the session, and she's gonna definitely take amazing care of you. Thank you so much.
I
Thank you
I
for
was
giving me a moment to do that.
I was thinking it might be worthwhile to bring it up here as well because I know it's a very common problem as well.
And it might be on the agenda, absolutely.
Mhm.
So,
So obviously, men and women's bodies are different. Does how are they different and how does it affect the woman's fighting style?
Well, I'll go first on that one. There's some people, men and women, I mean, just physically different. You got your big, strong guys, and you got your small, agile guys, and you got your big, strong women, you got your small, agile women, and so we all have a place, and we all have our strengths. The main things that change with women is going to be mobility. We've got boobs that get in the way. Where we bend is different from guys, so armor is going to fit us different, and it's the little things like that, and the way that we move, and that our bodies are shaped, and we're very curvy, so our bodies are all different. Whereas guys are either muscular or not, and they still, tend to have a V shape, or a V shape with a little bit of a belly involved. So generic armor works a lot better for men than it does for women. With us being curvy, small, petite, muscular, it doesn't matter. We still have to worry about our curves, our breasts, everything and make sure that they're protected well. So mobility is always an issue for us. But where we bend at the waist, where our strengths actually lie, how to throw a shot. We throw the shot the same as men. Women don't throw the shots any different. But a lot of people seem to think they are. And I know that a lot of teaching goes awry when it comes to that, which actually causes a lot of frustration too. But I think the main problems is finding the armor that fit.
Yeah.
Once you find the certain styles, they fit very well.
I'd like each of you to elaborate on this, please. I'd like each of you to discuss this, panel members, please. This is very important.
I'll jump in here. Speaking about just rapier only, Cherish made some excellent points, and that's true in rapier as well, obviously, but maybe less so to some degree. But one of the things I know from my experience, I really struggled with footwork until and I was training mainly with guys. It was a group of just guys who were amazing and awesome, but we struggled with footwork and my stance. And it wasn't until I actually talked to another female fighter who talked to me about our hips are different and our center of gravity is different. And so it's, you've got to work with your body and not against it. And it made all the difference in the world. So I think although we can certainly train with men and get a lot of good input from men, that being able to check in with another female fighter, heavy or rapier, can be very, very helpful. Just for kind of some of those small things that do make a difference. A lot of things don't make a difference between males and females, but there are some things that do, and that's important to have other women to talk to about that, and making sure there's kind of a community you can reach out to and feel like you have that someone to talk to about those things. Sibilla, I'll hand that over to you.
Yes, please.
I think it's a lot less about gender assigned at birth than it is about body type. I think that smaller, shorter individuals have to do things to generate power regardless of their gender. I mean, I have boobs. I know cis men that have very nice C cups. So I really think it's about body type more so than gender. And by the way, shout out to all of my non-sisters. I love you all. But I think the conversation should be more about body type when we're dealing with training than it is about the other, and how to work with each specific individual's body type, and to not try to make them do something. I can't do something the same as a 6 foot, person can. I'm 4'11.5". I have to do things that work with my body and with my limitations of my body. And I think that's the key is.
Sir Bree, in the discussion of women connecting to women and community, you've shared some discussions earlier about how sometimes women can be kind of competitive and how to overcome that kind of communal aspect?
You know, this topic is, for me personally, is just, it's not one of my favorite topics, but it's so important. Oftentimes women feel pitted against one another. And I'll give you an example. You know, let's say that you have 5 female fighters in your kingdom. And out of that 5, there's really 3 that are just top tier fighters. I mean, they are just really smoking on the field. And what happens is they're called against one another in a tournament. And so you have a whole bunch of people standing around yelling, chick fight, chick fight, chick fight, chick fight. One, I think that's hugely disrespectful to the combatants. And I think it adds more pressure to those women. And now what you've done is, instead of encouraging sisters, you've encouraged competitors. And now they feel like they have to compete against one another because maybe there's only one spot for knighthood, which is ridiculous. But there is a flavor in the society that tends to pit women against each other. Instead of promoting us as sisters, they promote us as combatants. And it's gotten a little bit better over the years, but I don't think it's healthy. And a lot of times the women that are coming up and are on the path and are being looked for for elevation, that's just another added stressor that, you know, now you dread fighting your sister in a tournament because there can only be one. And I've had women avoid fighting me because of these different strains and stressors that the environment puts us through. And I think we, as female combatants, need to address that. And you know what? When they're yelling chick fight, we need to address that, because nobody ever yells dude fight, dude fight, dude fight. You know, they just don't. So pitting us against one another instead of unifying us is I'm not a fan. And I've lived it.
I think this is a really lovely place to ask the question, how do you deal with the perceived differences in gender on the field? Not that there necessarily are, but the perceptions of the differences. How do you deal with those? What are the best ways to handle those perceived differences? Anyone on the panel that wants to take us, I would love to hear from you. I'd love to hear from all of you.
All right, I'll jump. Your Grace, you want to jump? Sibilla? I saw your hand move.
I got asked a long time ago on the heavy field at a war by a king, how could we get more girls to fight? And my response to him was, quit treating them like girls. You treat them like fighters. And I think that plays a part into it, is that we want to be equal. We strive to be equal. We work so hard to be the best that we can be, to be seen as equal on the field, for someone to turn around and treat us like a girl. And not having that to deal with would help more women want to come out and fight.
Beautiful. More, please. So Bree, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I think Her Grace really covered it nicely, honestly. Yeah.
Is it common for men to some issues are delicate, and I want us to have an open and honest conversation about these things with respect, but there are men that maybe don't like being beaten by a girl, and they may make poor choices. And they may not accept shots from a female fighter because they don't like being beaten by a female. Does that happen often? Is that a thing?
The rules in the society says if I hit you hard enough, you should honorably call the blow. And that can be used against you because you hit somebody, you watch the bruise welt up and you see the armor dent and they go, it was light. So not only have they just robbed you of the glory of the fight, but now they robbed themselves of honor and they robbed the fight of honor. And that is very frustrating because you know your power is there. You're watching the results of your power, and you have to. I choose to trust my opponent's honor. And so if this person, even though I'm seeing a dent and I'm seeing a welt and I feel that it was good, oftentimes we get back down because the fight's not worth it. We just fight another fight, or they take the win. Now, this can be done by women as well as men. But in my early experience, when I was first new to fighting in the society, I had a lot of folks that wouldn't call my blow. They would just say, that was light, skippy, light, whatever. It was very frustrating. So for me personally, I just started targeting really sensitive areas. You know, if you're not going to play fair, then I'm going to create pain in you. And sometimes that means that it's an armpit shot or it's an inside thigh. Or, it's right in the meat of that forearm. And those are painful, but I guarantee you, a lot of people won't shrug that off. And that shouldn't be that way, but the rules are the rules. And if it means that I have to target very, very sensitive areas because your honor isn't in check, it happens. Not as often, I don't think. I haven't had that happen to me in a long time. And I would let my sisters speak for themselves.
What about in fencing, Your Majesty? Sibilla, is that a thing?
Somebody posted this in the comments. I think it's kind of scrolled by now, but maybe I've been lucky. I've not seen as much of that on the rapier list, or what I do see of that tends to be more ego related than sex related. I've certainly run into some issues where, somebody who was maybe a higher level fencer, would get surprised and decide just not to take that hit because they didn't think that that somebody at a lower level was going to come in and get them. But I haven't seen too many problems on the rapier list myself of people not wanting to take a woman's shot. But again, it's lightest touch, so things are a little bit different, I think, than what you're going to run into on the heavy list. Well, Sibilla, weigh in here. I've been lucky. I haven't been fighting as long, so I feel like some of the women that came before and paved that way did make things easier for those of us coming later. So, but Sibilla, you've been fighting much longer. Jump in here.
I got you, Cherish, don't worry.
I think it is definitely less prevalent on the rapier field. I have had men tell me in heavy that regardless of how hard that I hit them, they would never call a shot for me. I have never heard that statement made on the rapier field.
It's a different game. So
I guess the next question would be what to do. You're
Actually, hang on a second. Cherish is not had the opportunity that she wants to have her say, and it is her turn to have her say.
So to mirror a little bit, like things have gotten better. There's always going to be, and like what somebody said earlier on the chat, it was spot on. It's not necessarily about gender. It could be about size. It's about ego. So when you get a butthole that's on the field, they're just going to be a butthole no matter who their opponent is. If it's somebody of a lesser skill, oftentimes on the field back in the day before our foremothers paved this road for us, women were automatically deemed of a lesser skill. And it was an ego thing to get, it was a blow to the ego to get beat by a woman. It is a different time now. And if you do find somebody that is a butthole, the biggest thing that's going to be is perseverance. Stay on the field, stay fighting. Everybody else, 99% of everybody else fights with honor. They're going to know that you fight hard enough and they're going to step up. They're going to step up. whoever's being a butthole, if it's being a butthole to squires, if it's being a butthole to short guys or women, eventually the rest of us are going to be like, wait a minute, I fought that guy. That guy's fantastic. I know that leg shot's good. And now it is my responsibility to go and talk to them as a fellow fighter. Like, this is unacceptable. And so this is how we're getting better and better every day. People, they see this stuff, they notice it, they're trying to speak up, go talk to this person. Maybe they're a good person, they just need their ego checked. Sometimes our egos get away from us, so it's easy. But the more that we are out on the field and that we show up, the more that we're not a novelty, we're not the mascot, it's not the girl on the field. Look, hey, there's a chick on the field. Oh my God, it's just another fighter. And so we're not considered a lesser fighter just for being on the field. And you get more of us as long as we stay diligent. We're always on the field, no matter what field that we choose. We're out there. There's never going to, from here on out, there's never going to be a time where it's unusual and people are going to feel threatened by fighting a female or feel threatened by fighting somebody who's short. So every day that you guys put on your armor and you go out on that rapier field, you go on that heavy field, or you go out, no matter what art form it is that you take up, every day that you do it is making it a better day for all of our sisters that come in the future. And that's what I feel about that.
So what advice would you have to encourage our female combatants kingdom-wide to be able to grow in their art?
I'll just go ahead and continue with it because I like to talk, I guess. The one thing that I would do to encourage them is that to remind them that it's not about victory, it's about honor. If you walk off the field with your honor intact, then you have won the day. If they don't, that is up to them. So you are out there for your fight. I'm out. If I lose, I lose. I learned something from losing. If I win, that's great. And everybody loves to win. But if I lose, then there's something else there that I know that I can get better. Even if it is walking off the field with my honor and dignity intact because my opponent didn't. So again, perseverance, stay out on the field, push, do what you love to do. And that's going to help you overcome your anxieties. That's what's going to help you overcome the buttholes that are out there, your opponents that you're going to fight. That's my advice.
Sir Brealthen?
Make sure yeah. I would definitely capitalize on what Cherish just said. You know, it is about getting up and putting your armor on and walking out to the field. You know, if you want to sit on the couch eating cheesy poofs, that's fine. If you want to sit on the sidelines with the gallery and drink lemonade, that's fine. But if you really have a passion and a love for fighting and you want to strive for the highest accolades in that, then put on your armor, walk out there. And, you know, there have been times when I've been broken and sick and I didn't feel good, but I put on my armor and I walked out there. And, you know, maybe I wasn't able to execute, but I still walked out there. And I made a presence and I was there. And then I decided at that moment, yep, I can execute, or no, I can't, but I still put it on. And you know, the consistency that we ask for is just that. Be consistent to the things that you love, right? And make sure that in that consistency that you're being fulfilled and not listening to all this around you, because there's a lot of this around you. And sometimes that can pull you off your path, your own personal desires. It can pull you away from your own personal desires and your own subject goals, your own victory conditions. So be very careful what you're listening to and who you're listening to, and try to stay as true to yourself and your path and your passion as you can.
Duchess Sibilla?
Yes, I think it's important to be out there and to continue doing what you love. I also think that those of us that are out there at a higher level or with a title or a rank, we see these things happening and we see certain people just not wanting to call that shot. Yes, the other person left with their honor, but it's our responsibility to point out the fact that that guy didn't, and to try and make that right. Whether that's talking to the individual that we feel didn't walk off with his honor, whether that's, you know, making a point that other people know that that's an issue if this person's unwilling to fix it. I think that we have a duty to speak out and to help those situations become less prevalent.
Your Majesty.
I agree with all of that, obviously. I do think it's important to remember, though, that although we're having this conversation here and we're pointing out that there are some problems that do come up, that's not the norm anymore. That being female should not be a deterrent to coming out to fight and to play. That there are plenty of people that are going to be happy to work with you, happy to train you, not give you a hard time every minute of the day just because you happen to have boobs. So, it's definitely important that we have these conversations, and that, as Sibilla said, we are aware and keep an eye on these things, and that we're willing to step up and try and prevent them when there is a problem. That we still know that it is overall still a very welcoming community, and I feel like a lot of progress has been made, and that thank you, Bree, thank you, Cherish, that allow us now to come out and just play and be part of the group, and it not be a big male female thing all of the time, despite the fact that we're doing this, but come out and play. I think that's the biggest thing, is the more that people see you out there, they see you out there doing your thing, they see you out there being successful and being a good combatant and being honorable. That's what's going to push things forward and allow us to have more fun with us.
Come on in, the water's fine.
Exactly. Exactly. We don't want to ignore the issues, but at the same time, we do want to make it clear that things are overall good. They're good. I think a lot of people.
It seems like our culture has evolved, which is actually the biggest thing that I'm relieved to hear about when we started discussing this conversation well before tonight, is that there was the old culture and now we're in a new culture, and we're getting better, and that is a wonderful thing. I have a question as a marshal. The first thing fighters fight is their armor. and what are some things that, as a marshal, a male marshal, I need to know, or what are some things that new female fighters need to consider when they're putting together their first kit, either in fencing or in armored combat?
Someone just wrote boob space.
There's a fantastic, let's talk about boob space.
That is worth saying out loud. Boob space.
Boob space. Let's talk about boob space.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, let's just do it. Let's talk about boob space. All right, so let's talk about female chest protection and what everybody likes, doesn't like, what works and what doesn't. Let's just dive right in here, ladies. Let's go.
Okay.
Start with heavy, Bree.
Okay, so I have tried every kind of armor you can think of. I've tried 14th century. I've tried it all. Chainmail. I've tried it all. I've even done a lot of hidden armor just so I could do, more soft kit, right? For me personally, I'm fairly straight up and down. I don't need a lot of boob space. But lamellar for women, especially curvy women, seems to work very well. But there is one trick, and you can do a leather gusset, which is just underneath the breast. You build the lamellar up, you put a leather gusset in just underneath the breast, and then it allows the top plate to lay flat to the top of the breast. Otherwise, what happens is your lamellar does this, right? When you sit down and whatnot. So lamellar is a really good armor style. I do a lot of soft kits. So my kit's predominantly, just clothing cloth, but underneath is molded plastics. And what I always look for in my armor is super light, highly protective. And that's what I strive for. Super light, highly protective. My helmet weighs 8 pounds. I have a titanium aventail, and I've made it so that it's very streamlined. I can literally lay my head over. And a lot of times what you see with new female fighters, you see a helmet that's literally cutting in and weighing into the collarbone and they can't move their head. So now, you know, your helmet, in my opinion, is probably the most important part of your armor, because if you can't move your head and you can't slick shots and you can't get out, you can't see. Now, that is not to admit that you need proper protection and all the soft squishy bits. I will always say that forever. And if you've talked to me for long enough, I do not like old school crotch protection for women. I am not a fan of the leather and the foam, right? That slips all over the place. I've been to doctors because I got hit there. Not something you want to do, okay? So there's a lot of new stuff on the market as far as female protection goes, and I highly, highly encourage every woman to research that. One of my personal favorites is Shock Doctor. That's a ballistic level Kydex-esque, protects the front of the mounds and then curves just gently underneath. Some of the products out there curve so far underneath that you have a tail, and nobody likes that. Okay, so for me, again, it's make sure your helmet is right. That's critical. And I know we start out in unorthodox patterns sometimes. Sometimes we just don't have a great helmet. But, you know, if you can, chop it up, get it to fit right, get it to move right. And I think that's really important. Second, light and highly protective. Those are my really go-tos right there. And I have probably made in my lifetime 15 different suits of armor. So experiment, you know, don't just sit back and accept this is my armor. Experiment and adjust and learn, and you'll end up being a pretty darn good armorer as well as a pretty good fighter too.
Duchess Sibilla, you mentioned something, I think you called it a floating breastplate.
Yeah, on the heavy field, I used to wear molded plastic cups that had a plate over the center that floated on the top, so I could cross my arms and as far as I needed to. It was very flexible, extremely protective. I wore it for several years, and took shots from great swords and everything else. It was pretty much bomb-proof, and move however I needed to move. So,
How was it
and that
constructed?
was good for the larger, softer breast areas too. Yeah.
How was it
Right, who's talking
constructed?
about boobies next? Catherine, I see you smiling, Your Majesty. That would be you talking about boobies next. It's your turn.
Okay. Rapier's a little different. It's a little bit easier, sort of. Chainmail is great, of course, because it molds. So it's nice and easy, and because you're worried about the pokey stuff, not the, you know, percussive stuff. Chain can be awesome. There is no such thing as good groin protection for females. It just doesn't exist. If somebody's found something that's amazing, let me know. But
I'll
okay,
help you out, Your Majesty. I'll
okay.
send you some links. I'll send you some links tonight.
I admit I don't wear anything because it's just not something that happens that often. I would highly encourage every female, if you don't want to wear, if you're not wearing a chain, to wear something to protect at least the nipple area. The rigid chest protection is awful as well. It doesn't usually fit right. It moves around, it cuts into you. But you can buy cups that just protect the breast tissue. It's very important. The getting poked a lot in that area is not good. But it is hard to find things that work really well for everybody because we are all shaped so differently. Sibilla, what do you wear? You don't wear anything, do you?
I don't. I'm really bad about that. I don't. I mean, I don't.
Oh, someone just commented about a nipple piercing, but bad. No.
I watched those get
Ooh,
off.
ooh.
Yeah, I'm really bad too. Like I said, I don't wear any groin protection, and I just wear the cups that protect around the nipple area because that's you're gonna get hit there. There's just no way around it. it's going to happen. So I recommend at least protecting that area. But chain's a great way to go, especially for a new fighter. It protects a lot of stuff. Okay.
What about what about curvy body types? You know,
I'll go.
just-
I'll put that on that way.
Yeah, Cherish.
I think that's Cherish's turn.
Yeah, it's Cherish's turn.
So I always, of course, have a very difficult time because I've got curves. I got a big old booty and big old boobs and some big shoulders. Just I always have a hard time fitting. But the one thing that I do suggest, and I absolutely love for all new female fighters from the heavy side, is going to be your lamellar and a corazina. Both can be made out of plastic. Plastic lamellar, it's usually what I keep on hand. I always keep plastic knees, elbows, and then lamellar for new fighters and to be able to hand out to get them on the field faster, because I know it's going to be good protection. Corazina, I made my first one out of 16 gauge stainless. It was a bit too heavy. It's probably where some of my shoulders come from. But you can make it out of plastic, and it's very protective, and it's great for curvy women and women who change. So you know, sometimes we bloat up, and then we're a size bigger. So a corazina has so many buckles on it and so many adjustments. It doesn't matter if you put on 30 pounds. Like, you can still make your corazina fit the same thing and still be very comfortable. You can make it as attractive as you want, or you could keep it just plastic and throw on a tunic over it. So it's actually very, very versatile. I have
Someone
two,
is
maybe
actually
three sets.
asking for the spelling of corazina so they can look it up.
It's corazina. Oh, you're going to ask me that. C-O-R-I-Z, corazina. C-O-R-I-Z-Z-I-N-A, I believe it's corazina. So,
Thank you so much, Ben.
if you type that in, you'll be able to find it. Or just send me a message and
We already got it in chat. Thank you.
oh, okay, good. I do have some patterns already put together as well that can be adjusted for anybody's size. For myself, of course, I love my titanium lamellar. I have extra protection here on the sides to make sure that my side boob is protected, but I still can move, and I keep it tight enough that I can take a really good blow, but also loose enough that it'll compress on itself and I can bend anywhere I need to. So I always have a problem with the back pinching, or with it not allowing me to get my arms crossed over. With it laced up well, and it takes a little bit of practice when you get it laced up just right for yourself. The lamellar is a great way to go, especially for starters. And then from there, if you need extra padding somewhere else, if you need something, the underbreast piece, you can still wear that underneath here. Also, Bree, I need a link for that protection, because I still just use the piece of leather. I have a piece of leather back by Sean, and I've lost so many to the porta potty gods. So if there's something else that's better after 20 years, I would love to protect those.
I got you.
I appreciate you.
Sir Bree, what was that called again?
So one of my favorites is Shock Doctor. You can buy just the Mounds piece protector. And like I said, it's made out of a ballistics kind of material. It's pretty stout. I've actually been hit there wearing it, and there's no impact there, which was a lot different than the foam and leather, which didn't suck up impact much at all. And after being glaved in the nether regions, and the head of the glaive tore off, and I got hit with pure wood, and my protection didn't stay where it needed to stay. And you know, let's just say hematomas in that area are unacceptable. So yeah, I would be happy to, you can go to www.shockdoctor.com, or you can go on Amazon and Google Shock Doctor. There's a lot of different female protection out there. I highly recommend this in particular because of how it forms. Also, you can buy the compression shorts with the Mounds protector itself, and these are shorts that actually have like a jock strap inside that hold the protection piece. Or what I like to do is I wear compression shorts, like bicycle shorts, underneath, and I just slide it into my shorts. I don't actually have to. I have both. Yeah, I that's probably one of the best female protections that I found that doesn't slide all around and, you know, poke things it's not supposed to.
I have I have that shock doctor actually. And I remember the first time I thought, oh God, I'm glad I'm wearing this, was when I have a tennis ball crossbow and I'm pulling it up and I can't think of what it's called. It slips off my toe and bam, full cock right up into the groin. So yeah, thank God. That would have hurt.
I posted in the chat, I did a quick Amazon search. So I posted in the chat an example.
Yeah.
And this is such an important subject. Any other questions on this subject or comments?
There was actually a question about the versatility of resizing very quickly on a Corazina pattern. Is that something that would be would have great flexibility in size changing for a person in that particular pattern? I'm getting a nod from Sibilla.
Yes,
I'm
I
getting
just
a nod
responded
from
to that.
Cherish.
Yeah, I just responded to that. The one thing that I do love about the Corazina, it doesn't matter your body shape, male or female either. If you are binding, then that just means that your chest is further away from the armor, which is actually more protection. If you've noticed a lot of, the plate armor, it was all, even on men, it was all meant to kind of come off. You never want anything to be form fitting. It comes away. So you actually get more protection if you're binding underneath it. I like the versatility because my shape will change from month to month quite a bit. So I like that you could just buckle it here and here, and it'll compress in if you need more room in the waist, or unbuckle it up here, and then you actually get more room. And you can even put your buckles in here. My Corazina had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different buckles on it, just without even having tassé. So it's just 7 different buckles so that I could adjust everything from my chest. The versatility, I think, is unmatched by anything. Just lamellar comes close. That's it.
Well, and that's a fantastic point, because as women, we have fluctuations in hormones, not just over the course of our life, but even over the course of a month, that could make the way your armors fit a little bit differently. So having something with great versatility in its ability to reshape itself to your body or be reshaped to your body can be a great benefit for any type of fighter who has a lot of fluctuations in the way their body shape changes.
As we're talking about armor, I think the next obvious subject is injuries. What kind of considerations should we have about injuries and treatment of those injuries, and perhaps things that we should be doing in our lifetime to make sure that we can enjoy fighting for the rest of our lives?
I'll open that up. So in the 36 years of fighting, I've had some substantial injuries from fighting. I've spent thousands of dollars in physical therapy to stay on the field and do what we do. I've had shoulder surgeries. And I'll say this: you want longevity on the field, heal. Let yourself heal properly and well from any injury that you've hurt. I mean, I know that Her Grace has back issues. I know that myself personally, hand issues. Hands are oftentimes damaged in our sport. Put a little padding in the cup of your sword, right? Put a little bit of foam up in there to dampen the blows that you're blocking with, if you're blocking that way. Work on your defense. Make sure your defense is tight and that you're anticipating blocking heavier shots. I have some neck injuries, some hand injuries from fighting in the society, repaired shoulder. So number one, heal. Let yourself heal properly. Number two, look at building your stabilizer muscles. Oftentimes we go to the gym and we build all these really big muscles, and that's great. And we neglect our stabilizer muscles.
Yes. From the therapist, yes.
So it's
critical.
Yeah, it's critical that you work on those little stabilizer muscles that support those larger muscles, especially as we age. Also,
Hold on. What are those? How do you do that?
Well, that's a whole nother subject, but yeah, working on the stabilizer muscles, building those smaller muscles, supporting your larger muscles, they go hand in hand. You need both. And finally, listen to your body. People will pressure you to fight. People will pressure you to get into armor. People will pressure you to be on the field. And, you know, you go out there and you're not feeling good and it's too hot for you and you don't pull yourself off the field, you know, you're risking a whole lot more than just the day or somebody else's perception or opinion. So learn to listen to your body, learn to build stabilizers, you know, eat well. Try not to drink on Friday night if you're going to fight on Saturday. It does help. You know? Save Saturday for the partying, you know, and I can't say I was innocent of that when I was younger. I was not. But as I've grown older, I realized that, you know, go to bed early on Friday, don't drink, and you get the extra miles on Saturday.
Outstanding.
What about in fencing? What kind of injuries, issues can one face in fencing?
Jump in here with me, Sibilla. Nurse Sibilla. Bruises, mainly. Soft tissue injuries, bruises. I mean, obviously we can do the whole groin pull, you know, roll an ankle, you know, all the same stuff. For women in particular, I've already mentioned, you know, soft tissue injury to the breast is not great. Long-term, it's actually very problematic. So protect your squishy bits. Otherwise, it's, you know, it's the same as what Bree was talking about. Know your limits, know when to get off the field, stay hydrated, allow yourself to heal, you know, all the same kinds of things. But it's the same bruising. Damage is typically what we see is small bruises.
Sibilla, would you like to share?
Bruises, absolutely. Occasionally we'll see a concussion here and there, usually, you know, due to just an accident, you know, not that it was intentional, but someone slips and in the middle of throwing a shot, or, you know, the sun's in their face and they can't tell exactly where they're throwing it. So I've seen a few, you know, concussions. I've had one just from a bad hit with a new fighter, you know, but a lot of it is just, especially for myself. Okay. I'll be very honest. I have had neck and back surgery, not due to an injury from fighting, but due to an injury in mundane life. I'm 50 years old. Like, there are things that people who have not had my injuries can do that I can't. And I have to understand that about myself and adapt my fighting style to, you know, to cover for that. Like, I'm not going to do a deep lunge. I'm going to use footwork to get where I need to be to take a shot. So sometimes we have to do that for ourselves and realize our limitations and adjust for it.
Cherish? Sir Cherish, did you want to
Sister.
add?
There you go.
I would just go off of what both of them said. You know your limitations. If it's a limitation that you can't conquer, if it's such as an injury, it's going to be a long term. Pay attention to that and work around it. If you find that you are getting certain injuries in certain places, or you're having more pain somewhere, talk to somebody who knows something about fitness. We can help you with your core. We can help you what muscles actually are going to help you not do that. So the more that you actually work out outside the field, don't use your field as use fighting as your only form of physical activity. That is the expression of your physical activity. You need to get to the gym and you need to build core muscles and real muscles, not just your big biceps. You actually got to build up your back, your core, everything that Bree was saying. If you don't do that, you will suffer injuries. You're going to pull groin muscles, you're going to pull back muscles, and that's going to affect everything that you do. So it's a little pre-gaming, literally. Like, you understand what it is that you've got to do: stretch, yoga, Pilates, weightlifting, cardio, do all that to get you ready on the field and protect yourself from injuries.
So there's a guy that, I'm sorry, there's somebody goes to the doctor and the doctor's doing their examination and they're finding that this person has bruises on their body. And the doctor leans in and says, "Are you okay? Do you need to talk to somebody? Are you safe at home?" And the person says, "Oh, no. I'm in an extreme sport. And acknowledging that this is an extreme sport is, I think, important, especially for newer fighters, that we will get bruises and things will happen. You know, we can protect ourselves, obviously, and exercise to prepare our body, but it's just our armor is not universal. And we will get hurt once in a while, and that's part of it too. However, I've also heard in the old school that, there are those fighters that will go out of their way to, I guess, initiate younger fighters into this idea that we're an extreme sport. And that's not something we would encourage or want for anybody. But it is a reality that can happen, and we have to be aware of that. Any comment?
So, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Go lady, go.
I was just gonna say, I'd recommend to all fighters, male or female, to have video of you fighting whatever sport you do, because you never know when you're gonna need that video for your doctor, whether it's because you're showing that you are safe in your own home because of your bruises, or because you've rolled an ankle, or have a broken rib, or whatever. You may need to show them what has happened, because from the medical side of things, it's always very, very helpful for them to see what it is that you're doing, because you cannot explain to anyone really what we do without them seeing it from the medical side of things.
That's awesome. Good advice.
So, I think you were speaking, Guillermo, of a fighter practice, and sometimes people like to introduce new people with calibration that's way too high. Is that what you were trying to say?
Yes.
Okay. So I think we've either seen that, all of us have seen it, or we've actually experienced it. And that's where, you are a new person and you go to a fighter practice, and it's not necessarily out of malice, it's more out of misinformation. And sometimes you get somebody who's like, I'm going to hit you really, really, really stupid hard and show you just how painful this can be, because I want you to know, I want you to realize. And I think that's a bad approach. I've always said, develop passion before pain, train, teach. I'm not saying, go easy and defeat the purpose of training. I'm saying your calibration doesn't have to be Duke level when this person is standing stock still and you take their head off like a T-ball stand. And now what you've done is this person goes, nope, I never want to fight again, and I'm done. And I've seen that both in men and women. Create strength and knowledge, teach defense, teach offense, but allow this person to work through the process, without, hey, I'm going to initiate you by taking your head off. That doesn't work. And we chase people off like that.
Mm-hmm. We're actually having some people discussing that in our chat right now, about how they were run off for years from people doing the very things you just described.
Yeah, and it's our responsibility as seasoned fighters to either call that out, hey, that's not how we do, right? And it's our responsibility to make sure that we are, in my personal opinion, indoctrinating with fun. Make it fun before you make it painful. We all know it's painful, but let's find out how fun it is before we find out how painful it is.
Anybody else have anything they want to add to that? So what about differences in weapons? We've talked about gender-specific protection. We've talked about changes in armor. We've talked about a lot of, about pain and injuries in our martial art and how they can be different. Are there any differences in weapons?
I think our weapons do tend to be shorter. We have shorter arms, we're shorter to the ground. So our weapons tend to be shorter, which changes your game. I know on the heavy, I don't have a whole lot of experience in the rapier. I enjoy rapier, but I don't have enough to be able to speak from the rapier field. But I know in the heavy field, I've got short arms and I'm closer to the ground. So I've got shorter swords, which means that I've got to get in A and B range. I've got to get up close, which is a very dangerous place to be with somebody who's taller. So you have to learn to fight differently with the shorter weapons. So it kind of changes everything. Fighting with, but I'm more comfortable fighting with the shorter weapons than the longer weapons to begin with. So, but I know my squire sister, she fights with longer swords and she enjoys that. She's got a much further reach. But to go with standard, we're always going to end up with the shorter swords, but just understand what that means as far as the range that we're going to have to be in on the field.
I see all of you eager to speak on this point, so go ahead. So
I'll do heavy next, and we'll roll into rapier. For me, I know my limitations. I am not a great sword girl. Okay, I'm just not, and I've tried it, and I have no passion for it. I'm pretty terrible at it. Bastard sword, love bastard sword. I'm great at bastard sword, very much like kendo in my beginning roots. To Cherish's point, I fight with about a 34 to a 35-inch sword. If I start going past that length, I have elbow problems. So if I'm fighting with a 36, I start having elbow problems. If I'm fighting with 35, I can get away with it, but a 34 with a thruster, that's pretty potent for me.
So legitimate healthcare reasons are one of the reasons that may limit the size of the weapon you choose.
Yeah, true, very true. And we were talking about body shape and type earlier, right? Some people are just so adaptive to being able to wield a greatsword. Some people aren't. I'm not one of those people, but I love 9-foot spear. I like 6-foot spear. There's a lot of weapons that I can get away with. I hate glaive. I hate it. I never want to play glaive. I've tried to play glaive. It is not my dish. So, as a knight, I believe that you should know how to teach all these weapons. Okay. And I think you should know these weapons. But if it's not your flavor, that's okay too.
Duchess Sibilla or your Majesty, I see you're ready.
Sorry. The weapons in rapier aren't significantly different, male versus female, because they're lighter. Sibilla will tell you she's 4'11.5" and can still fight with that 45-inch blade. They are, the longer blades are a little bit heavier sometimes, until you build up some strength, that can be a little bit problematic. But the weapons aren't significantly different, and it's having that extra reach actually can be very, very helpful. So we can still use those longer blades just like the boys do with no problem.
Duchess Sibilla, did you have something to add?
I think with rapier, you get a lot more nuance in your weapon because there are different makers. A lot of times you're not just buying a chunk of rattan and whittling it down and making it your own. Like there are actual people that are making these weapons that make them differently. Some make them lighter, some make them heavier, some make them thicker, broader. So I think, our weapons are very individual to our own taste because, we can then modify them with a heavier pommel and things like that. So I think there's a lot more variety, I guess. Not saying you can't get variety in rattan, you can. I think that there's a lot more differences, I think, for us in rapier and choosing a weapon. It's all preference. It's not because our arm is short. As long as you can hold up that 45-inch blade, you can, you can use it. And I like it because I got short arms.
Excellent. Okay.
Could I ask Duchess Cherish to talk a little bit about journaling? This isn't necessarily a male or female thing, but it is something that you've shared with me that I thought was really, really a valid tool for all.
Yeah, we were talking the other night and got talking about journaling, and I always have my squires and I myself kept a journal, and it is a fantastic tool, especially once you're getting started. You have so much information coming your way and it's hard to keep track of all of it. A journal is going to help you keep track of what the person has told you that you need to work on, and then your own personal notes. I don't like fighting this person because they're tall and I had a hard time with them. All right, well, now we know we have something to address. It's something that you could go back and take a look at with each of your fights. Every place that you go, who did I fight? Who did I like fighting? How was I feeling that day? Was I on my game? Why was I on my game? Did I take care of myself? Did I get a good night's sleep? Have I worked out at the gym the past week, which upped my game on that next practice? Is this person a really good teacher and he makes sense to me? Or this person says something I don't understand. Let me talk to another fighter and see if I understand it. So you just kind of keep track of everything that you're doing, who you fight, how you, the lessons they give you too. And it is a good tool to be able to go back and reference again. Everybody wants to help you. You know, females on the field too. Most people out there want you to do well. And so you're going to get a lot of information. And sometimes it seems a bit overwhelming and too much. If you keep everything into a journal, male or female, you keep everything down in that journal, it's going to help you place it in your head properly too, and kind of sort through all that information and be able to go back and reference it. So it's something I require all my squires to do. And it's something that that I did, and I still have my journals from when I was a squire, and I still go back and look through them and find things that I've forgotten that were actually really valid points that I should be doing today.
Does anybody else use journaling as a tool?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've had a fight book for 100 years. And in mine, I'll write down what I see my opponent's openings are when they're tired, you know, what they like to kill with, what they killed me with, what I killed them with. And then typically what I'll do is I'll fight them 3 fights, I'll write my notes, and then the next time I see them, I have those notes and I know that they let their arm drift back instead of going into guard. They let that arm drift back. So maybe that's a target that I want to look for.
Sibilla, did you have something?
I do.
Okay, I'd love to hear it.
I actually started keeping a journal for very different reasons. Much like a lot of people, I have very bad brain weasels and I suffer from really bad imposter syndrome. So I started keeping a journal basically to keep track of where my headspace was during fights, what my percentages were during fights, so that I could basically try and combat the feeling of inadequacy. Like, what did I do well that day? You know, what did I fight? How did I feel that I fight? How well did I actually do win loss ratio? Because for me, actual data helps me to get thoughts out of my head that are negative. That's helpful for me in the aspect of just being a little bit more confident in how that I feel that I'm fighting is actually how I'm fighting, if that makes sense.
It let you see the reality of it. That does make sense.
As opposed to perceived reality.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's really cool.
That's a beautiful idea and a great suggestion. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Speaking of perceived reality, when a male fighter or a martial or trainer is giving you feedback to guide you on your path, and it doesn't apply, you know, maybe they're a different fighter style, you know, a different body type. Does that happen often? And if it does, what's the best way of managing that situation?
I'll jump in here. It happens all the time because, as Cherish pointed out earlier, and I think she's correct, people do want to help. They absolutely do want to help. And, you know, it's important to remember that just because their advice may not be helpful or might not fit your style, or maybe it's a really bad time for them to come and give you that advice because you just had a really bad fight or whatever, that 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, it's coming from a good space. They really do want to help. They're not trying to make you feel bad about what just happened, although not everybody conveys information in positive ways all of the time. So for me, I've gotten very good at just saying thank you and moving along. Sometimes you have to be a little more willing to somebody jump in, help me out here. Bree, you're unmuted.
So yeah, this happens to both men and women, but what happens with new fighters or even more advanced fighters, you'll start fighting your fight and you're in the middle of your fight and they'll stop you. And they're like, no, hold on. And you're not being unsafe, but they just want to instruct you at that point. You should hold your shield here or your sword there. And I've seen this a lot over the years, and it's frustrating for me. It happened a lot to me when I was coming up, and it was very frustrating. And what it does, instead of, if your combatants are being safe, and this is rapier or heavy, and they are fighting it out, let them fight. Because every time you step in and you stop that fight for a suggestion or whatever it be, right, you're breaking the rhythm. And sometimes that person has a plan. Sometimes they're trying to work on something and you're breaking that rhythm continuously. Let somebody fight 3 to 5 fights and then instruct, or let them work through that process. Now, the other side of that is you have ownership in your fighting, right? So it's your responsibility to say in all the kindness, excuse me, can you please instruct me after? Let me get through 3 or 4 fights. Am I being unsafe? No, you're not being unsafe. Okay, then let me get through 3 or 4 fights and then please instruct me after. And that's just a conversation that you need to have. That's ownership in your own fighting and your own journey. And you got to be willing to do that. Because sometimes the helpfulness is overwhelming and not helpful. And it breaks the cycle of that education that you're trying to work through, that your brain is processing through, your vision is processing through. So to all of our marshals and to all of our very helpful fighters and friends, be mindful that you're not interrupting a process and let them work it out. You got to be a good judge of that. And as a combatant, you got to own your path and you got to own your own fighting.
Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add?
Your cherish, you say own your path.
Yeah, you have said that. I've heard you say it.
Yeah, you own your path. Just to piggyback on it, Bree said everything there. It's like their understanding intent is important. So you don't get that frustration and feel like somebody's just picking on you. They're not. They're trying to help you. They've seen something and that's fine, but that's not going to help me right here, right now, not unless we're actually working on that. So it's okay to say, I know, and I appreciate your help. Thank you. If you could hold on for that 1 second, I just got to get through these fights. And you know what? Most of the time, they're just so eager to tell you about something they just noticed. They're like, oh yeah, I'm sorry. And then they'll let you fight and they'll sit back there because they just want to help you. And but they're fighters, so they understand that aspect too. So just you tell them that they're always going to be okay with that. They're always going to usually apologize, but they're always going to sit there patiently and wait till after the fight. They understand exactly where you're coming from, and so that's okay if they're doing that. You will always get advice that just doesn't pertain to you. Sometimes you're not ready to hear it. Sometimes it does pertain to you, but you're not ready to understand that too. And it's still coming from a good place. If anybody is offering you advice, they're trying to help you, whether you want that advice or whether you adhere to it or whether it applies to you. That is still a very noble and good act coming from somebody taking their energy to you. So thank you so much for your advice. I will see what I can do to work on that, or I will try to work that in, or I will practice on that later with my knight. Or could you explain that to my knight so maybe they could teach me, because I'm not quite understanding how you're putting it. All of that is okay. protecting your path is really important. And I think for all of us that have been on the field for any length of time, not even on the field, all of us that have followed whatever path, you end up being persuaded or pushed with other people's opinions, and you don't realize I got these obligations. I need to do this, I need to do that. And I think one of the most important things that I would say to a new fighter or a new member in the SCA, rather, I always attribute everything to fighting because that's my passion, but I do mean it generally for whatever path you choose, is that your path. And whether or not you get to your location, your destination is up to you. And it's okay if you never get to that destination, but keep it your path. You're not walking another path that somebody's put in front of you. If they tell you that this is what you need to do to get to your destination, but that is not what makes you happy, then stay on your path, because the journey is the actual most important thing. And you just keep following your path, and eventually you'll get to the destination you want, and you're going to be happy the entire time that you walk that path. It is something that you have to protect, because all of us will do that. We don't mean to. I know this worked for me on my path, and I want to help you. And so what you need to do as a squire is to do this, and that might not be what's on your path, but it worked for me, and I'm desperate to help you, and I want this. I want you to have an easier way. So it's not always, people trying to just make your dream bad. They want to help you in their own way, not realizing that might not be what makes you happy. So it's going to be an important and personal thing that you do, is to protect your own happiness, protect your own game. It is your game. Don't play it how other people tell you to play it. Play it the way that it's going to make you happy, and ultimately your happiness will make the game better for everybody else. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Duchess Sibilla, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I mean, what everyone has been saying is everyone's going to offer advice. Take all the advice that you get. Now, whether you utilize it or it works for you and you try it and it doesn't, accept all the advice, and whatever is not going to work into your game, just let it go on by, but you've accepted the advice.
If it don't apply, let it fly.
Exactly. And the other thing I would say is don't lose your voice in your fight. Your fight should be your fight, what makes you happy and what you. If you can take someone else's advice and make that apply to your game, great, then that can put something else in your toolbox. But don't ever be afraid to speak up for yourself, whether it's seeing something happening on the field, saying something about it, or coming up with a game plan, or just, no, thank you, I can't take it now, talk to me later. Your voice is what's important to your game, and just don't let that forget. Don't let people diminish that.
So
That seems important. Can we dig into that a minute? Because we've talked about the old SCA and a little bit how things are better now, but women being able to express themselves as leaders and not be talked down or diminished. That seems like an important message, an important point. Does anybody want to fill that out or add to that?
What is it? I'm not understanding clearly as far as, are you saying for women in leadership roles, as far as us giving out advice in leadership roles?
Can I try and rephrase this maybe? I'm going to try and rephrase it in a different way. Is there something that can be done in the SCA right now that can improve the quality of life for our female combatants?
I'll chime in here.
I see Cerric going too. Which, all right. Who's going first?
Go ahead, you guys. Sibilla's going first.
Sibilla's going first. Okay.
I
What can we do
think
right now to make life better?
one of the more helpful things, I think, and I'm seeing it a lot more now in the rapier community, is for women to be put in leadership roles. I'm seeing right now a lot of war generals that are female, a lot of unit commanders that are female, that are very good and are really stepping up and doing the job. Having women in leadership positions in the marshalate, as kingdom rapier marshals, things like that will help pave the way for other women in the community to feel that their voice might be heard and is important. And I think that having wider representation in all of those areas will go a long way until making people feel more comfortable stepping up and taking those positions.
And I'm guessing you mean that across all of the martial arts, equestrian, combat archery, thrown weapons, all of the martial arts that we practice. Cherish, I know you were excited to speak next.
Sibilla makes a great point. You know, having people in representation in all the forms is what it does. It just creates some. Again, we're not the mascots on the field. It's not unusual. From the today forward, everybody who starts in the SCA, there'll never be a time where they don't know a female knight or a female mod or a female general. That is never going to be something that's unusual. So it's not going to be anything that they have to get used to or learn to deal with. I think the most important thing that we could do today is to make sure that we represent ourselves and our sisters on the field. Get out, get in armor, get on the rapier field, get on your horse, get your bow, go shoot. Just get out there on the field, because you never know who's watching. You never know who's on the sideline. And as long as we are out there in the field, even if you're the only one that's on the field, from that day forward, everybody who is watching, it'll never be a time in their life where having females on the field isn't normal. So it's again, with perseverance, we get out there, we represent, we show them that we can fight, we do fight, and we will fight, and there's nothing that's going to stop us.
Isn't that the point of Heather Dale's song, One of Us?
It is absolutely the point of Heather Dale's song. That is a fantastic song.
All right. Who'd like to take this next?
I would like to add to that, and I don't have much to add to it. There's just one point that both their graces touched on, and that is, good grief, women support each other, right? I mean, we've got enough going on that, you know, years and years ago, I had a woman walk up to me and she said, "You'll never be a female knight." And up until that point, I actually looked at this woman. I looked up to her. She was one of the little badasses in the Outlands for a long time. And she had retired from fighting. But when she said this to me, it was like shocking and disappointing. And I said to her, "You're my problem."
Mm-hmm.
And she says, "I don't understand what you mean. Why am I your problem?" And I said, "You're a baroness. You used to heavy fight. You're well respected and loved. Your fighting was respected and loved. And if you hold this sentiment, Bree, you'll never be a female knight. Well, you're just one more problem on my path. And you're my sister. You're the one who has experienced this more than anybody else around us." And so, you know, it opened my eyes to two things. One, I didn't want to listen to this, because if I had, where would I be today? Secondly, I don't want to ever be that woman. I don't want to look at any of my sisters and go, "You shouldn't have the cookie. You shouldn't get the cookie. And I'm not going to help you get the cookie."
Yeah, can I ask a question? There's something in my profession, my mundane life, that is referred to as learned helplessness. And I wonder if, from that old school way of thinking, if she would say something like that because that's the world that she came from, and she would think she couldn't think beyond that. She couldn't reach beyond that.
I think that there's part of that was conditioning. Sure. You know, the environment was part conditioning. The other part of that, and I don't want to speculate on her emotional content, right? That's not fair for me to do that. You know, maybe it's disappointment in her own right. Maybe it's just pure disappointment that she had to retire fighting, and that, you know, that was one of her dreams, and therefore she doesn't necessarily want to see somebody else succeed because it's crushing enough to have to give up one of your dreams. Who knows? But, you know, words have power. And how we lay words on other people, and if those people aren't strong within their own continence, they can crush. And I think it's hugely important to not only be careful with your words when you're in a peer situation or you are a peer, but it's also critical when you're bringing up somebody brand new. They're already like suffering self-confidence, right? I've never done this before. And now you're going to come in with bombs of crushing, confidence or crushing somebody else's dream of their path. Don't do it. Don't be that person.
Your Majesty, did you have something you'd like to add?
I think they've covered it very well. The only thing I would add, and this isn't a male female thing, but as far as like what can the SCA, what can we as a whole do, is just remember this isn't pie. It doesn't run out. The cookies are never ending. So just because somebody else has gotten something, gotten an award, been elevated, whatever, that doesn't go away. It doesn't run out. There's still plenty of that for everybody. So, gatekeeping in peerages to kind of, not let people in, things like that. That's the area we need to focus on and just make sure that we all remember that everybody can have that prize, and that should be one of your goals, no matter what your position is, supporting everybody else on their path, their journey to whatever cookies it is they're looking to get. So again, not a male female thing, but definitely it's easy to, once you get in that particular group, whatever it happens to be, to want to close that door behind you. And we don't have to do that. We're in this amazing organization that doesn't limit those cookies. So help everybody get a cookie. We should all have cookies. Cookies are good.
Well said, Your Majesty.
The known world is vast and wide, and some of us have traveled from one kingdom to the next. And so I ask, should we be aware of differences from one kingdom to the next, and how does one have to adjust?
I've traveled multiple kingdoms. I've lived in multiple kingdoms. Calibration in Trimaris is very different than calibration in Meridias versus, say, calibration. I wouldn't say calibration necessarily versus war tactics. Say war tactics in Trimaris are very different than war tactics in the Outlands. I think when you go to a new kingdom, whether you're living there or you're visiting there, when in Rome, right, you should be respectful of their customs and their flavors, and be a great steward for your own kingdom, right? Be a great representative for your own kingdom. And a lot of times that just takes a conversation. You're out there and you're like, hey, am I not hitting hard enough, or am I not taking light enough? It's a conversation, and they'll be happy to let you know, well, our kingdom takes a little bit lighter than what you're accustomed to, or, you're not quite hitting hard enough, or whatever it be. But it's diplomacy, and it's a conversation. But being mindful that you are going to a different kingdom, or you're going to an event, and don't use it as an excuse, right? My kingdom hits harder, you don't hit hard enough. Well, okay, that's just disrespectful, So be a great representative.
Any other voices that would like to chime in?
I think Bree covered it all. She that was the perfect answer. And just be respectful and start the conversation. Talk to
her. We haven't heard much. I'd like to open the floor to our listeners. By the way, we have 26. We're up to 27 participants, which is fabulous. Does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask? Give our guests an opportunity to take charge of the floor.
Any questions?
I actually have one coming in. So if you'll give me just a second, they are typing now. And don't worry, it's just 3 dots right now. But we do have a question coming in. So how does your responsibility change as a rose and as a peer? Because we do have a bushel of you.
Responsibility in what regard?
And how you represent yourself in the SCA, I'm guessing.
It changes a lot as a rose and as a peer. I mean, you should, wow, that's a huge question, actually. There's your perception of the SCA changes a lot once you've become a rose, once you've sat on the throne. I think your responsibility then becomes, how to word this, you become part of the process. I think it becomes part of your responsibility to ensure that everybody else is having a good time as well. And as a peer also, that part of your job at that point then is helping to make sure that, you know, you're helping to kind of put on the show at that point. You want to make sure that you're doing everything you can to represent the best of the SCA and what the SCA can be, whether that's on the field fighting, making sure that you're supporting, you know, newer fighters, younger fighters. I mean, yeah, somebody please jump in here as well, because it's such a change. I can't even really.
I know, I'm sorry, that one just kind of came out of left field. Sibilla, I see you reaching, go for it.
Okay, so this is an interesting conversation for me because I'm a white scarf and a rose.
Mhm.
And the whole reason I wanted to be a white scarf was because when I was queen, the rapier community was so wonderful to me and so supportive to me that I wanted to give back to that side. So it's a weird balance for me with the rapier community because I'm both a rose, which is meant to be, you know, respected, revered by the Order of the White Scarf, but then I'm a white scarf, so I'm trying to respect and revere the other roses. So it's a kind of weird balancing act in the responsibilities between those two, you know, and people try to give me respect on the field, but then most people know that I'm really a fighter. So like, come at me, bro. So it's a little bit different, I think, for roses that are fighting in the rapier community than it is for roses elsewhere, if that makes sense.
It does. And I don't want to leave out my 2 amazing sirs. So I'd like to pose the same question to you both. And instead of the position of Rose, what,
queen, but she's no longer.
what did, how did the perception change when you were elevated to knighthood?
Well, I think Cherish, Her Grace can actually speak to the rose part.
As well, yeah.
Well, both Her Majesty and Her Grace made good points. It does change once you're elevated in any form. Then you now have the responsibility to walk your own path, but make sure others have guidance to walk their path. In order to keep the society alive in the way that you want it to be kept alive, you've got to put forth the efforts to make the dream for everybody else. On top of that, you are now an example. So everything that you do or say, especially as a rose, you're supposed, not that I have any trouble with this, you're supposed to be well-spoken and graceful at all times. You're supposed to be what a representative of a rose is supposed to be. And so there's certain expectations that are sometimes not met of what people think a rose should be. But it does come with a lot more responsibility. And there is that division, much like what Her Grace was saying, as being a knight, you're expected to protect the roses. But then as a knight, you're also expected to be on the field. So how do you do that? So we always have to find different ways to do our responsibilities and fill both roles without cheapening either of the roles. I know when there's a tournament or when crown tournament goes on and all the roses go to the gallery, I grab a weapon and I stand in front of the roses. I am in the gallery with my sisters, but armed as I should be in case somebody comes close to the roses. So I get to fill both roles that way. So I always try to find a place to be in the middle and to just be a good steward and representative of what I believe the royals are and what roses are, and then live what I believe that a knight should be as well.
And Sir Bree.
We reframe that question.
It was basically the context of how things changed and responsibilities for you in how does your responsibility change as a peer and a knight?
I think when you put on the mantle of a peer, you know, you are a visible teacher, right? I mean, from 100 miles away, you are that visible teacher. For females in chivalry, I like to joke around once in a while, and thankfully it is changing. You know, we're like unicorns, right? So here, you know, you see a female knight and, you know, it's like, ooh, there's a female knight. Ooh, look at that. And, you know, people bust their cameras out and it's the paparazzi sometimes, right? And that's very flattering, but there's also this huge amount of weight that goes with it. Because there are people that you don't even know who are marrying virtues to you. They are marrying ideals, their ideals to you. And oftentimes you can bruise that without even knowing it. You can be put on a pedestal by people around you and you can bruise that. You can just really bruise that very easily. And I think that when you put on the mantle of a peer, you have to be aware of that. But you also owe it to yourself to still be yourself, to still be true to your, you know, nobody becomes a peer because they weren't true to their own happinesses and their own path. I mean, paths are difficult for a reason and they test you. And I think how you come out on the other side of that is really important. So, you know, recognizing that, yes, you know, you're going to become far more visible and that you do have responsibilities to the people, but you also have to be true to yourself too. You know, you can't just sell out to, and some people do, right? They let it get in their heads that, oh, I'm a peer and now I have, what's the word I'm looking for? I think better of myself than I should. And I think humility is good and I think it should be maintained, but I also think that false humility is just as dangerous. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We are down to about our last 10 minutes. And what I'd like to do is I want you to, each of you, to throw out your absolute best piece of advice, whether it's for a new fighter, whether it's for a new female combatant, whether it's a new person that is coming into the SCA. If you had one sentence to take a new person by the hand and say, if I could give you one piece of advice, this is something that I want you to carry with you. We're down to our last 10 minutes. Share your wisdom, please.
Hey, first. Hi.
Yeah, volunteer in a hurry.
My best words of advice is take your time. It's not a race. Don't jump into a relationship with a peer or a household. Take your time and actually get to know the people. Sometimes people that want to snatch you up are not doing it in your best interest. Or maybe the person that you think is wonderful when you first meet them and you start a relationship with them isn't the person that you're going to need when you grow. So I always tell people take at least a year, meet a whole bunch of people, hang out with a whole bunch of people, learn from a whole bunch of people before you make that decision on where you think you're going to belong.
Anybody else excited to be next?
I'll go.
Okay.
My advice for somebody just joining the SCA is try everything. Maybe not right off the bat, but try everything. Because just because it was fighting that brought you in doesn't mean you're not going to find a group of people that you're going to absolutely adore in the scribal tent or blacksmithing or blowing glass or whatever. You'll be surprised how many other groups out there are doing super cool things that you might have never even noticed. So try it all. I mean, this is the coolest group, seriously. I mean, the number of things that we get to do, that we get to see, that we get to, the people we get to hang out with, the diversity is insane. So take advantage of that, and whatever it is that brought you, check out all the rest of it as well. That would be my piece of advice.
Okay, who's gonna be next?
I'll go next. I might have to get off here in a minute. I'm going to mirror that. I tell everybody, don't get tied down for a year. Check, try everything. New people are new to the SCA, again, try everything. You don't know what it is that you're going to love. Like, I've always loved fighting. That's what brought me into the SCA. Who knew I was going to love metalwork and making perfume? You know, like that was going to be something that I loved too. So spend a year trying everything, and don't discount it, and don't tie yourself to a person for a year. And to new fighters, I tell them to be the warrior that they want to be. Just be it. Be the warrior that you know you are, and always get out there and fight. Biggest piece of advice, always remember as a fighter, is you can't sharpen a knife on butter. You're going to have to get out there, and you're going to have to fight the superior fighters. You're going to have to get some bruises. You're going to have to put your helmet on, and you're just going to have to take some losses before you can get good enough. So you can't sharpen a knife on butter is something else that I also tell the new fighters.
Standing. All right.
Well, that's a hard act to follow, all three of them. Absolutely 100% agree with, give it a year. Don't get tied down. Don't, do all the things. Have fun. The big 3-letter word, fun. Have fun. Lots and lots of fun, right? And I'm going to tell you straight up, do not let other people poo on your parade and your dreams. If you figure out you want to strive to be a knight, don't let other people take you down and get underneath your skin, because they're out there. If you don't want to fight tournaments, don't fight tournaments. If you just want to fight wars, go be the best war fighter that you are ever going to be, and don't let people tear you down for it. Right? I mean, fly your flag and run your race and all the other wonderful things that we say in situations like this. But most importantly, believe in yourself, own your own path, have fun, and don't let other people tear you down.
Thank you.
Keep your spirits up.
Thank you. And I want to thank all of our participants, all of the people that have come from across the known world to join us tonight. And I want to thank all of the knights and dukes and Her Majesty and my co-facilitator tonight. It's been illuminating, and I'd like to leave us with this one thought.
Before I got to fighting, or when fighting got to me, I looked to find examples on the field of chivalry, and I saw mighty arms much stronger than my arms could ever be. So I thought perhaps that field was not for me. But still I stayed and watched the fighting, till one figure stood apart, in armor newly fashioned and a helm more pot than art. But each blow was thrown with honor and a lightness of the heart. So I took that step which soon became a start. 'Cause she was not the biggest fighter, nor one to raise a fuss, but I remember being proud that she was one of us. And we might never stand together in a shield wall side by side. Because of her I lift my sword with pride. quietly, not the type you would expect. With a braver heart than many and a slop shop to respect. And I guess she'd once decided this was where she'd like to be. And I thought if she could do it, why not me? 'Cause she was not the biggest fighter, nor one to raise a fuss. But I remember being proud that she was one of us. And we might never stand together in a shield wall side by side. Because of her, I lift my sword with pride.
Thank you so much, everyone who joined us this evening. And I hope that you learned something, that you grew, that you felt like you were seen, validated, and heard within your community. And I just want to say to all of our participants, thank you. You honor us.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you so much, Guillermo and Maindria, for hosting us. It was a great meeting and very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Majesty, for participating.
Majesty.
Thank you for all who accepted our invitation.
Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful night. We'll see you on the field.
You all-
Good night, my sisters and brothers.
Night.
Good night.